you all are here to learn about vegetable gardening and crop rotation. The reason why I combine both of those topics is because they do go hand in hand like love and marriage. All right? I could teach you all how to have a very successful first season of gardening, but then the next season, what are we going to be doing? Right? So instead of doing that, I'm going to teach you all how to plan for crop rotation, because making a plan gives you a better chance at success, right? So what we're going to talk about is garden planning. All right, so garden planning means crop selection, site requirements, okay? How are you going to grow your things, right? I'm quite contrary. I do different things in my garden, okay? But there are different ways of producing your vegetables or any other thing that it is that you're growing. And are you going to use seed or purchase stock? Because that is a very big question as well, right? When should you be planting things? How do you get the most out of your gardening space? All right, and then we'll discuss a little bit about garden management. So we'll talk about how to water, the importance of mulching, making sure that your garden bed is truly prepared by pulling out as many weeds as you see and then being able to manage that afterwards. And of course, the application of fertilizer, all right? And one of my other favorite things, composting. Composting is important. And of course, I'll always encourage you all to come to us for help when you're trying to figure this out. All right? So garden planning, crop selection, that is important. What can be grown here? Beans, corn, cucumbers, eggplant, okra, peppers, squash, tomatoes, broccoli, cabbage, carrots, collards, kale, lettuce, onions, radish. Almost anything that you've grown anywhere else can be grown here. It might just be a different variety, because never would you be going to a garden store in October to purchase tomato seedlings, right? Like nowhere else. Welcome to the Republic of Florida, right? That is how it works. So that is something that you really, really have to think about. And the other thing that I want you all to be encouraged to do is grow something you know you like and you're going to eat, because then you're fully invested in its success. Do not grow it just because it can be grown. You will ignore it if it starts to annoy you, and it's going to become a bigger problem, right? So if you know you're not overly fond of okra, if you only eat okra once a year, and that's when you go to Louisiana and you have some jambalaya, fine. Have it then, right? But if you don't know how to make that dish, but you're just growing okra just in case, don't grow okra. Okra is not your friend, okay? So just consider the things that you're actually going to use. Have a game plan for what you intend to use, all right? And let me see. Okay, so that's it for garden planning. Yay, crop selection is done. All right, site requirements. Full sun. What state did we live in? The Sunshine State. What do we have today? Do you know you can still get a sunburn out here like this? Yep. So believe me when I tell you, it shocked me. I got sunburned in Alabama on overcast days, and I was like, this has got to be a joke. How do I get sunburned on an overcast day? But I learned my lesson, and I'm sharing it with you so that you don't end up having that painful. So full sun means direct sunlight for at least 6 hours of the day. All right? So if you do not have direct sunlight for at least 6 hours out of the day, then you have to do some real juggling with what it is you intend to grow. Tomatoes will not be your favorite plant, okay? Cucumbers either, all right? Because they need a lot of time to have that particular spectrum of light on their leaves to do the chemical reactions it would take in order to produce what you would like for it to produce. But if you have a neighbor down the street and you all are buddies, you all can trade out. You'll give them some of the herbs from your garden and they'll give you some tomatoes. See? Networking. It works. All right? Near a water source. I have a garden that went derelict because we did not have water. Water is important here because, as most people are wont to say, we do not have soil. We do have soil, folks. Soil is a medium for growth and many things grow here. And you all can admit that many things grow here because lots of people bring me copious amounts of weeds every week and say, what is this growing in my backyard? It's taking over. So we do have a medium for growth. So we do have soil, but our soil is very sandy. It will not hold water. It will not hold fertilizer. It will not hold anything, okay? So we need to work with our soil. And that is important for you to recognize. So when you say we do not have soil, we do. And there are certain varieties of plants that grow very well here in our soil, okay? And keeping water nearby will help you to reduce the aggravation and frustration of having to back water 20 meters to your garden bed. Try to put your garden bed near water, or at least connect hose lines, right? I've got 3 hose lines onto my spigot right now. All right, try to keep your vegetable garden bed away from competing tree roots. You do not want to see what your carrots will look like, if you get any, growing under an oak tree, right? It's not cute. They're not appetizing. We humans have a very specific idea of how straight carrots should look. You will get, well, it's true, right? And be realistic with yourself. You don't want to be digging into those roots either. And one plant is going to win. There will only be one victor. In a competition, there will only be one victor, okay? So these are the things that you need to consider. And well-drained soil. I have not met a vegetable crop yet that likes to keep their roots wet, okay? So when your tomatoes are yellowing out and you have other problems, one of those problems might be that your container got waterlogged or your garden bed got waterlogged, all right? So you want to make sure that you have well-drained soil. And what do we have a lot of here in Florida? Well-drained soil. So there is a balancing act that you must accomplish when you are doing your vegetable gardening. I am moving through this. All right. How are you going to accomplish your gardening endeavor? I am happy to say that I am 44 years old. I do not intend to be crawling around on my hands and knees through several acres of garden beds. That's not my thing to do these days, right? Now, maybe when I was 24, I might have pretended to have that sort of ambition, but I was busy chasing rugrats. So it still would have lost, right? I am saying this to you all so that you can do a personal inventory and be realistic. A garden on the ground or a garden raised up is still a garden. Be honest with yourself. Be realistic with the expectations that you have for yourself to say, I might need to go ahead and make myself a raised bed because I do not want to be bending, squatting, and all of that. You get your exercise at the gym and not in your backyard, right? Because somebody can catch you if you fall off the treadmill at the gym, right? So these are the things that you have to admit to yourself. And maybe you just want to grow some lettuce because your bill for lettuce is exorbitant. And you can do that in hydroponic setup, right? So there are many, many ways that you can go ahead and produce your own food crops without jeopardizing your safety and without it becoming a task that you don't want to go and engage in. Like, I was daft the other day and put 20 plants into my garden bed. I told myself 5 plants the next time I go out there, and the rest of them will have to suffer because I was out there squatting and moving and squatting and moving. Do I look like I have a great relationship with the gym? We broke up years ago. I'm still paying him alimony, right? But that's what happens, right? So you just have to be careful. Know what it is that you're doing and be very realistic about your expectations. I planted 28 tomato plants my first year of vegetable gardening in Alabama. I had no idea. My 2 sons eat like lumberjacks, so surely I needed 28 tomato plants and I needed 13 cucumbers, amongst other things, right? I had 0 things to do with my time, surely. Well, when I started getting in tomatoes, I was like, maybe the next time I'll only do 4. Because my neighbors were sick of me sharing. I had all kinds of things going on in my yard. Like, I could have set up a produce stand and made a killing if I had been entrepreneurial. I'm not. So, you know, these are the things. So have realistic expectations. If you are the only person utilizing your tomato vine, chances are you might just need one. I get 4 sandwiches out of 1 slicing tomato, right? And so if you're only averaging 1 or 2 slicing tomatoes per week, you might be good with that. Tables. They do have table setups for garden beds now. And I had 2 people with neuropathy, so that means that they don't necessarily feel their extremities. So it would not have been a brilliant idea to give them beds that they've got to get down into. So table setups. So whatever setup is going to work for you to be able to efficiently and safely garden, that is the setup that you're going to go ahead and engage in, all right? And some of those things cost money. Some of them just cost a little bit of extra effort. Figure out which one of those boxes you check off and then go with it, okay? Now, are you going to use seed or are you going to use purchased stock? Seed is less expensive. They've got lots and lots of seeds. And purchased stock is a little bit more expensive, but at least you know that it germinated. You know how many you've got. You're putting them in the ground and you're going to have yourself a great time with them, right? So either way, and like for time, you might want to go ahead and use purchased stock and then use seeds the next go around, because there is going to be a next go around, right? We're planning our crop rotation, okay? When to plant? You can plant here all year round. You can grow something to eat in Florida all year round. There is no season that you cannot plant something that is edible. So you can do okra in the summer, right? You can do sweet potatoes and pumpkins and things like that in the summertime. You can do tomatoes and your zucchinis and your eggplants and all that jazz from fall through winter and spring. So there is no season that you cannot grow any particular type of crop. There is always going to be a time of the year here in Florida when you can grow something that is edible outdoors. Now up north, you can do different things indoors, but definitely not outdoors, right? Because the frost and the snow will kill them. We do not have those problems here. So that brings the other question of when to say when. When people call me up in the office and they say to me, well, I've had this tomato vine going on 3 years. I'm like, that must look like Jack's beanstalk, right? That's what I'm thinking in my mind. And it's starting to decline. It shouldn't still be alive. Surely you have put that poor baby out of its misery. You know, so these are the things. So know when to say when. You should rotate your garden beds seasonally, because here in Florida, what some people call annual, because they have one proper growing season north of us, all right, can be a perennial here because the growing conditions for that plant are still feasible. They're still viable here, all right? So if your tomato plant is still giving you 8 months in, it needs to be gently put to sleep, all right? Put him in your compost bin. Have his replacement hitter in line to show up, all right? You don't want to have your tomato plants in for more than that 1 season of growth, all right? Even though Florida will lie to you and say, that's our new best friend. We've been having beer on the back porch. Don't listen to Florida, because Florida is not telling you that it also has several types of nematodes, certain types of insects that are like, but there's a smorgasbord. She always has one over there in that corner. I'm telling you guys, it's great over there. All right, so do not listen to Florida. Listen to your extension agent. Pull them out at the end of their growing season. Have a replacement ready for them, okay? Rotate your crops on time. All right, moving right along. All right, how to maximize space. The average house lot is 1/4 acre, right? And then you take out the size for the house and this, that, and a tenth, and you're left with very little space left if you're trying to grow food for 50 people. But if you're only trying to grow food for the average household size, which is 2.5 here in Indian River County, you have enough space, be it in containers or outdoors in the ground, however it is that you're growing your vegetable crops. Here in wonderful Florida, you should have enough space, all right? Now, but you want to maximize whatever space it is that you're using, okay? So you can use a trellis. So if you're planting beans and cucumbers and things that like to climb, trellising these things instead of having them run along the ground. Using a trellis is going to maximize that space because the trellis is going to take it up, okay? And that upward direction means that you don't have to have your downward space for them to grow. So you don't have to have 100 square feet on the ground as long as you've gone ahead and given it 20 square feet in the air. And the air space is there, right? You don't have to pay mortgage on it or anything. That's really thrilling to me. I have a lot of trellises at my yard. All right. Now, and where do you put your trellis? You're going to put your trellis to the north end of your garden. Why? Because you don't want it at the south or western end. It's going to shade out your south or eastern end because it's going to cast a shade. So you want to put your trellis to the north. So make your garden plan to rotate your crops even with what is going to be trellised in mind, okay? You're going to use wide rows, especially for your leafy green vegetables, so that their leaves can get really nice and big and lush for you. And then you won't be stepping on them as you walk through the rows. The other good thing about that is you'll be able to get in there and pull out any little weeds that might happen to show up. So it's very important. Make yourself a few nice wide rows, sow your seeds in, thin them out accordingly, and it'll give you enough space to work and it'll give them enough space to grow. All right? Interplanting. So there are some things that will make a lot faster for you, and there are some things that'll take forever and a day. Carrots take forever, but it might just be because I lack patience. But then if you put radishes in among your carrots, you're still going to be getting something out of that space, and it will be very gratifying, and you won't mind that carrots take forever and a day to make for you. Like it is the longest watch on the clock ever, because you're not even seeing it develop. I think that's the problem. You're like not seeing any of the progress. Do not be dismayed. Stick some radishes in there. Radishes will give you life. Radishes will be like, I'm ready, Pop, I'm ready. They're awesome. And they germinate real fast. You can sow some radish seeds in today and go out there tomorrow and you've got leaves. Like radishes, they're amazing. They're good for people like me, all right? Okay, so interplanting, long season things with short season things. So that by the time the long season things need all of that space, you've been there managing it and the weeds have not gotten in there to compete with anything because you have been doing things with that spot, okay? Another form of interplanting is tall and short things. So if you're growing corn and you've got lettuce that would like that shade, right? You stick your short vegetables in underneath your taller vegetables, or you could be like me. I run my cucumbers up my mammoth sunflowers because that stalk is about this thick. And I just plant my sunflower about 2 weeks before I put in my cucumbers. I drop my cucumbers in and they're like Jack and the Beanstalk. The sunflower shoots up and my cucumber vine shoots up along with it. It is awesome. And the sunflower does not mind. It is very nice and strong and sturdy, but I do use the mammoth variety because the other skinnier stalk varieties, they're not as solid as we stockier ones, you know? So that is really, really cool. So think about these things when you're planting your plants. And of course, sunflowers in your garden are just a really nice welcome. They draw you out there into the garden to go do things. So those are things to consider, all right? And of course, there's always the interplanting with the beans and the corn and the pumpkins, the three sisters plantings. If you do not eat pumpkins, do not plant the pumpkins, folks. And if you do not want 10 pumpkins all at once, Do not plant the pumpkins. You can get one from me. All right? Just because you can plant it does not mean that you have to. Now, you can put your corn in there as a crop to infuse nitrogen for your corn though, right? That would be brilliant, and that would reduce the amount of fertilizer that you have to manage in your corn. So that would be a good thing, even if you're not going to eat your beans, because then you can harvest them for their seeds and use them as cover crops somewhere else. All right? And skip that one. All right, so garden management. Mulch. I love mulch. My whole yard is covered in mulch. I do not have a lawn to mow. I do have a 22-year-old to mow it though. And he's delighted with the fact that I send him out there with the wheelbarrow to mulch different areas. Having said that, that is my crazy idea that I've implemented in my yard. It's not for everybody, but mulching your garden beds is an awesome thing to do. It helps to reduce your weed competition because they have to struggle up underneath that mulch, right? It helps to moderate the temperature in your garden bed. And do we not need moderation of temperatures here in wonderful, hot and humid Florida? Yes. So, and then it helps to keep the water from evaporating. So all that wonderful water that you go out there and put your effort into putting into your garden bed will not just quickly evaporate when the sun comes out. You need to make sure that you mulch your little vegetable garden beds. And then the really great thing is that when your tomatoes fall on the mulch, you can still go ahead and eat them because you don't have to be squeamish about soil microbes going into your tomatoes. Look here, I will eat them all, except for the ones with the hornworms in them. I don't need no extra protein, thanks though. And so for watering, overhead watering is not recommended. So you don't take your hose out there and just sprinkle on top. You want the water to go to the roots of your plants. So if you have a soaker hose, if you've got drip irrigation running through your beds, that's fine. Or you take your time, you aim the water to the root system of your plant, not the leaves. Because here in wonderful, hot and humid Florida, we have a lot of fungi that love to travel, and the one thing they're looking for is the wet leaf of a plant. They jump in there, they use this little thing called an episorium, and they use that water bubble to create enough pressure to open the stomach of the leaf and go into the leaf. And then you've got a new problem. So if you're going to take your time and make the effort to water your vegetable garden, make sure that all of the water that you happen to be applying is going only to the root system, okay? That is important. The other thing is, because I've had a heckler before, rainwater is rainwater. There's a difference between the water that you are applying from the water that nature is applying. They are not the same. So yes, rain is going to fall on the leaves of your plant, and it does not cause the same sort of damage. It is what it is. I know that I use municipal water when I'm watering my garden, so I'm aware that there are differences in the chemicals. Now, I do not have a well. I cannot tell you what the well system and why that water is different, because surely it percolated down into the, right. All I can tell you is rainwater does not adversely affect you, your plants, the same way that your application of water on your plants does. When should you be watering your garden? In the mornings, right? Before 10 o'clock, okay? That is when you should be watering your garden, yes.
Why not in the evening?
Because the evening is not when they're as active, right? So they're actively growing and they're actively doing their daylight hour things in the day. In the evening, they've gone into their sleep rhythm, if that makes any sense to you. All right, so in the daytime, when it is super hot, they're utilizing that water for cooling and for other chemical reactions. At night, they're not doing that. All right? At night, they're kind of packaging and processing the sugars that they made in the day. In the daytime is when they're processing and setting up their sugars. that's when they need the water. And overnight is when all of your fungal pathogens come out, right? So you do not want them out there doing their thing and having this nice wet surface in order to accomplish it. So water in the early morning, and try to not have this as something that you set on a timer. Be mindful with your watering, okay? Be mindful about how much water, when you are watering, and how you are watering. Over the past couple weeks, I have absolutely neglected my vegetable garden bed. It should not need my support. If it needed my support, I set it up wrong. Because surely we have had more than enough rainwater to sustain my vegetable garden bed. And if we have not, something is wrong with the way I set up my bed, not with the way that nature has been supplying it, okay? Let me find that one slide with the real numbers. Oh, here we go. Yes, and I've got it marked. Yes, I'm sort of got it together today. Young plants need 1 inch of water per week, applied frequently. So you're going to try to go out there every other day, give it a nice little sprinkle at their roots, and go away. Because the roots are still up there, they're still shallow, okay? Mature plants need about 2 inches of water per week, but applied less frequently. Why? Because they have really good abundant roots now. And so if you come in and you water them maybe twice for the week, and you give them 1 inch at each watering instead of 1 inch over the week, then what you're going to do is you're going to have that bed fully saturated, right? And the roots will be able to go ahead and drink as it should throughout the rest of the other days when you're not out there applying water. And the other thing for that is you don't want to miscommunicate. You don't want your plants to not be receiving the right signals from nature, okay? So if it's still getting inundated with water, what is going to happen is going to continuously keep on trying to use that water. Let them get a little stressed. Half of the problems that we have with plants that come into our clinic is the abundance of love they receive. It is okay to stress them a little. It really is, okay? Let them look a little unhappy with you every now and then. As long as they're not going to die. Like, those are things, famous last words of all parents. But did you die? No. Okay. You're an adult. Go live your best life. If you're rotating, then your new rotation of crops should basically be the same age. Now, if you have a crop that requires 2 seasons, one for vegetative growth and the other to mature and produce fruit, those are the ones that you're going to put to the side of your garden anyway for the best use of your space. Because you don't want to have something, say for example, an eggplant is not one of those things that requires 2 seasons. Asparagus is, right? Okay, so for example, if you've got asparagus that you're trying to grow, you don't want to put that in the middle of your garden, right? Because then that's going to create an issue. You want to maximize the usage of your space by putting it on the perimeter of your garden. Maybe that can be a hedge to one side of your garden, right? But you definitely don't want those in the midst of the things that you have to continuously manage. You don't want to do that. So that's how you would manage that. I have a little ditty that I sing when I water my garden, right? And I have a little marker on the spigot for where I know at this mark, when I sing this ditty, I put down 1/2 inch of water. How did I figure that out? Tuna fish cans. The 6 ounces are 1 inch wide. The master gardeners taught me that. They're the best. They are the best. They teach me so many things. So I took my tuna fish cans, I distributed them in my vegetable garden bed, and I stood up there and I waved my wand in reasonable sweeps. I did not have a blessed thing in the bed. This was just for my measuring purposes. Waved my wand the way that I normally would in my sweeps, and when I got to 1/2 inch in that pan, I said, okay, I know what song it would take, and I know what mark on my spigot it would be. So that is what I would recommend that you try doing. However, if you're using a watering can, You're going to be watering the leaves of your plants. So may I introduce you to the miser's way of drip irrigation. I reuse my plastic bottles. I puncture holes into the bottoms of them. I fill them up with water, cap them back off because that creates the vacuum that makes them not drip, right? I go out to I use them in my containers, but it'll work in your raised bed. And then I just drop my water bottle in there, I uncap it, and there goes my water flushing into the soil and not on the leaves of my plants. Okay? Now, if you want to spend money on a soaker hose or on drip irrigation, go for it. That is no problem, and it's reusable, yeah? Those things are, you pull them out, you fix things back or whatever. Those are completely useful. However, my baby is 20 years old and he still eats like 4 lumberjacks. So I have to pick a struggle. And my decision is, and I've got a wonderful 7-year-old niece visiting. She loves filling up the water bottles. She thinks we're bombing the garden. All right? All right, so now fertilizer. Yes, we encourage you to fertilize your vegetable gardens. The appropriate use of fertilizer is not a problem here in wonderful Florida. It is the inappropriate use of fertilizer, right? When you do not apply your fertilizer correctly, and fertilizer is not the answer to all of your problems. Oh, when it looks a little yellow, I gave it some fertilizer. Why? What caused that yellowing? Then you can know whether or not you need to put fertilizer on it to correct it, right? Fertilizer is a solution, but what is the problem? You need to identify the issue before you go and give it a solution, all right? So the goal is to keep your fertilizer and your water at the root system if that is that type of fertilizer. Now, I fertilize my orchids. Don't ask me how I ended up with orchids to maintain. They were left on my doorstep by well-meaning people who love me. And that has a foliar application, right? But there are some that are for spraying on the foliage, and there are the majority of them for being taken up into your roots, okay? You're going to keep your fertilizer and your water wherever they are supposed to be. Read the labels, folks. If you're applying any kind of chemical, read the label. It is a legal document. It is a binding contract, all right? And if you use it inappropriately, you will be breaking the law. And you will not have any recourse if something goes wrong, because you did not use it the way that they said to use it. They're the people who made it. They're the people who say this is how you are legally allowed to use this. And if you do not use it correctly, who are you going to sue? You can't sue them. All right? So please use whatever you're going to use according to the label. And if it does not have a label, all right. Plant and animal-based fertilizers, they require that your soil be healthy and it has microbes in it. All right, so if you're not managing your soil to have organic matter, and if you're not managing your soil to have critters in it, some that you can't even see, sometimes going all organic is not going to work for you. So make sure that the way that you're overall managing your gardening area is uniform, right? So if you're doing organic fertilizer, make sure that you're using other organic methods of managing your garden, because organic fertilizer alone does not an organic garden make, all right? That's not how this works, okay? Leafy crops, they like the fertilizers that have a lot of nitrogen, all right? They're gonna eat it up, surely, because those are the things that you want to be green, okay? Root and fruit crops, so if you're growing sweet potatoes like me, or if you're growing tomatoes, then those are the things that are going to want more potassium, all right? And so that segues into, I use palm fertilizer in my vegetable bed because palm trees are fruit trees. and they have a higher ratio of potassium than they do of nitrogen. And everything else in the garden bed is very, very happy because it does not require, believe me, it does not take that much nitrogen in the world to make you some reasonable lettuce. It does not. But your tomatoes are so persnickety, all right? And a palm fertilizer also has the micros, so it'll have like your boron, your magnesium, all of those other little things. And so the only thing that you'd really have to contemplate is whether or not it needs a calcium supplement. But calcium is also something else that it takes such a little bit amounts of, but it is so important to have. So be very careful about these things. Know what it is that you're using and when you have to use it, okay? You can use liquid fertilizers in your vegetable bed because that's a controlled area, but definitely, well, it should not really be sold to individual homeowners for their lawn because that's not a controlled area, right? That's going to be an area where it's going to run off. And it's already liquid. And what's going on with our soil? Our soil is like, sure, go on by. It's not going to hold it. And if your grass is already being poorly, it's already terrible, then you don't want to use a liquid fertilizer, even though they'll say, well, it's going to cheer it right up real fast. Don't believe the hype. It's not the best way. So yeah, you can use your liquids for your smaller, more controlled applications, but definitely not as a broadcast thing in your landscape, okay? All right, so pest issues. There are 88 different things to say about pest issues. Here are the things that I'm going to say to you. Identify the problem first, okay? Figure out if it's something that you're not doing correctly. So maybe the spigot from your turf is not turned only on the turf. So some of your other plants in your vegetable garden bed are getting hit and you're not seeing it. That's not something that you need to do anything more than adjust that head, right? Does that require a hit of fertilizer or should you go out there spraying napalm? No. Identify the problem. Know whether or not it's an insect that's eating it up and then identify that specific insect, all right? Know whether or not it's a disease. And to know that, sometimes you got to know what diseases really go after your tomatoes. What diseases really go after your cucumbers, right? So that you can narrow it down and be able to say, oh, this looks more like that. So know what it is you're growing, know what they're susceptible to, and try to plant varieties that are not as susceptible, right? So you'll have some labels that'll say TMVR, so tomato mosaic virus resistant types, and they'll also say they're tolerant. So it's not that they won't get a disease, they'll just be ugly, but they'll make for you. What do I care? If my tomato is edible, I'm going to eat it. The vine is going to be culled in a couple of weeks anyway. Bless the vine. We appreciate it. It'll be recycled in the composting bin. All right? So don't be too concerned about all of that. Identify the real issue. And here's the thing. If 5 different types of plants are exhibiting the same problem, it's definitely not a pest or a disease. It's something that you're not doing culturally, right? So it could be your bed is just staying waterlogged, there's a drainage issue. It could be the irrigation is hitting all of it too much. Those are things that you've got to consider because if your tomatoes and your cucumbers and your lettuce are failing and they all look like they're failing from the same thing, it is not a disease. And chances are it's probably not an insect either because lots of diseases just like certain things, lots of insects just like certain things, but boy, watering is ubiquitous, right? So, and a lack of enough sunlight, all of those are cultural things that you might need to address. We had sunflowers that were lopped off, and so we figured out that it was an overzealous fella with the weed whacker. Did not know that they were sunflower seedlings. All right? So those are the things that you want to make sure that you know your enemy before you set out to defeat it. All right? In my lecture about pest management, I actually have like a little picture of Sun Tzu's Art of War, where I encourage people to know their enemy and know themselves. You're not going to have a perfect garden bed. You're not. Some of your marigolds are going to go lopsided. Some of my zinnias went like this. You know, it's not going to look perfect. I have a leaf notcher problem on my guinea tree. It's not going to be perfect. So decide how far from perfection is your threshold. And work with yourself. Be kind to yourself. If you see one piece of sedge, you know the second piece of sedge is coming up. Grab him while he's little as you're passing by, right? Scout your garden. Know what's going on, know what's happening in there so that you can be prepared, all right? So that's what I'm talking about with that. And drought is a real thing here in wonderful, hot, and humid Florida. So make sure it's not a drought issue either when you're addressing it. All right, so now let's go to my favorite part of this, which is crop rotation. This is a part of your overall planning process, okay? This is as important as your site requirements, making sure that you've got the right area. This is as important as making sure that you have proper irrigation access. This is as important as making sure that you have the right type of soil and correct amount of drainage, and that you don't have it in the way of a spigot. You know, crop rotation is going to be your plan for continuing success, all right? That is what is most important. Do not deny yourself an opportunity to do this efficiently, effectively, and my favorite thing, in the most miserly way possible, all right? Because when you plan to rotate your crops, then you can assess what it is that you're growing and whether or not it'll be cheaper for you to just go buy one plant or purchase a set of seeds. We purchased seeds this year in the Master Gardener volunteer group, and what we did was we had plant giveaways. So we did a co-op. One person planted cucumbers for everybody, another person planted tomatoes, another person planted bell peppers, some other people planted zinnias and marigolds, and we had a plant swap. So really it took us like maybe 15 or 20 packets of seeds, but about 30 of us have complete gardens. All right, so these are things to think about, especially right now with social distancing, et cetera, et cetera. These are ways that you're able to have something communal without too much risk, right? You get to laugh and say, I got that little tomato seedling from a neighbor down the street. It's awesome. All right, so these are ways that you can have these opportunities. But if you're just doing it by yourself and you're concerned about preserving your seeds, a lot of people swear by sticking them in the refrigerator. I keep them in a box under one side of my bed. They're still viable. I use them. But remember, I have sons that eat like 4 lumberjacks, so I use up a lot of my seeds, all right? So crop rotation. All right, so this is a recommendation on how you can do your crop rotations. It is not the be-all and end-all of ways to rotate your crops. The good thing about this is the way that it works in the cycle that it's in. So it is very efficient to plant the things that are beans before you plant the things that are tomatoes family, because that gives them that rich boost of nitrogen as they go into the bed to have their leafy growth, to be able to produce the fruit for you in a timely manner, okay? So that is one answer to why not rotate lettuce in after your beans, because they want the nitrogen. Believe me, there's enough residue there for everybody after beans come out. All right, so looking at that sheet, it says reduce vegetable pests with crop rotation. And when they say reducing vegetable pests, they're talking about disease pest pressure, they're talking about nematodes, they're talking about other things like insects that'll want to come in and harass your plants. All sorts of pestiferous issues will be reduced if you are rotating your crops. Wherever you are, find that box and start from there. So, for example, I had pumpkins in a patch in my yard, right? And I wanted to put some lettuce in there. It didn't really matter what was there. Now I have lettuce there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the blank on that says Asteraceae. Do you see that one? Yes. And it also has another one on top of it that says Asteraceae and brassicas. All right, so that's my lettuces or my cabbages and things like that, right? Okay, so now what you do is you say, okay, I had lettuce here. I find that box. I can go down and find out what I should replace it with, or go sideways and find out what I should replace it with. So no matter what your starting point is, bed 1 through bed 5, area 1 through area 5, you must choose one of those as your starting point, and then choose a direction. Go downward or sideways. You're going to get the same answer. All right? So, now take the other paper. There is the SP 103. It's Vegetable Gardening in Florida. It's the UF publication. Yes, that one there. All right, and you're going to go, I think it's to page 7. You ran out of those? Oh, wow. Okay, well, I will have our email address and our Facebook page information up here. If you did not receive one of those, let me know, and I will get one to you. All right? All right, so these are lovely tables, and they would be almost useless if you don't know what it is you're looking at. All right, so these tables are saying to you, here's the crop that you might want to grow. Check your region of Florida. We are Central Florida. We are the northernmost Central Florida county south of 60, and then north of 60, we're legit Central Florida. Yes, ma'am?
What zone are we considered?
Okay, so inland, we're considered 9, 10. On island, you're considered 10, because the island has that buffer of water that keeps that heat in, okay? So I have defaulted mostly to central, because if we're the northernmost area of South Florida, then surely when I teach this lesson in Port St. Lucie, I say to them, you all are also cusp, right? So try some things for the central recommendations. They might work better here for you, all right? Because we do have those temperature fluctuations that would make it useful. So I stick with Central Florida, all right? And it's going to tell you these are the recommended times for growing this. So that's the other thing. It also tells you about whether or not it makes sense to start these seeds indoors first, whether or not you'll be able to easily transplant them outside, or whether or not it's best to just sow them outside. Do not start radishes inside. Don't start your carrots inside either. Okay, just FYI, don't do it. You will save yourself a lot of heartache and headache by not starting them inside. All right, another thing that this is going to say to you is how many plants per 10 feet, right? And how much produce should you expect from these plants per area? And one of the other great things is it gives you how much space the plant requires. That's awesome for those of you who are growing things in a container, because then you'll know how many square inches of container space will I need to grow this plant sufficiently. So if you've got a pot that's only 12 inches around up to the top, but it's about 20 inches deep, you might be able to grow your tomato in there, right? But not if it's 5 inches deep and 12 inches wide. That might be a stretch. I mean, I've seen it. It can happen, but you're going to be babying it a lot, okay? All right, and the best thing yet is the last column all the way over to the end that says plant family, because you rotate by plant family, all right? So what you're going to try to do when you are doing your gardening is keep all of the families together. They relate very well to one another, they have the same issues, and they usually have similar needs. All right? So that is one good thing. So if you are growing tomatoes over here in bed 1, your bell peppers should also be in that bed. Your eggplant should also be in that bed because they are all cousins. All right? Now, if you're growing cucumbers, your cantaloupe should be in the same area. Your watermelon should be in the same area. And so that goes with if you are setting up your summer bed and you just pulled out your cucumbers, you can't put watermelon back in there. They're the same family. It needs to be moved on down the line. All right? That is important to note when you're doing your crop rotations. You're moving families around. All right? Now, what's a freebie are your herbs. Except for something that we use as an herb, parsley, right? So if you look on this to the top where it shows you some examples of the plants that are in the families, you'll see where parsley is in the Apiaceae family. Parsley has to be rotated. Parsley will attract the same nematodes that carrots attract because they're first cousins. So when you're rotating, you don't have to rotate out your basil, although I do because it gets woody, right? But you do have to rotate out your parsley and anything else that's in the Apiaceae family. That needs to be rotated out. That will get nematode issues, all right? So be careful to recognize these things as you're doing your gardening. All right. You were asking, why do you put marigolds in your garden bed? Because marigolds have oils in them that actually act as a repellent for certain types of insects, be them above the ground and below the ground. All right? So that's why you stick your marigolds in. And if they'd brought me the cucumbers, I would have put them in with the marigolds because I interplant marigolds with cucumbers. Because cucumbers, they're so susceptible. You got to coddle them a little bit. Just a little, though. Not a lot. Yes?
Is there a certain ratio for the marigolds to vegetables?
I try not to make the marigolds take up too much of my bed because I'm not going to eat them. I just put one or two in there. There are days when I admit to myself, I just like the look.
Add a little color.
I put zinnias in there as well. So I stick zinnias in with my tomatoes and my bell peppers because tomato plants and bell pepper plants, their flowers are not conspicuous, right? They're not out there. They're not showy at all. But zinnias, on the other hand, zinnias are like, how dare you walk by and not notice me? And then they ask the question that is really embarrassing, are you colorblind? Now, we humans are susceptible to being colorblind. I know a couple. However, the insects, the pollinators, they are not. And they are attracted into that area. And they will visit your zinnias and they will visit your tomato plants. All together, it's a lovely situation. All right, so let's try crop rotation, okay? I want you all to look at the colorful sheet and we'll get back to the vegetable gardening handout because there is more on that I want to discuss with you all. All right, back to the crop rotation sheet. Look down at the table that says, here's your recommended rotation schedule. All right, everybody have that? Good. Now, I want you all to find the row that starts off with Fabaceae. You found the row that starts off with Fabaceae? The table to the bottom? All right, so if you go down, or if you're allowed to go to the right of Fabaceae, what is the next thing? Solanaceae. All right, do you all see that? Everywhere that you see Fabaceae on this sheet of paper, if you can go down or to the right, there's one answer, Solanaceae. So that means that when you're making your plan for your vegetable garden bed, after you've got your beans in that area, you're going to plant tomatoes, bell peppers in that area afterwards. All right? That's the best way to get your one answer. All right, cucurbitae. Let's find them on the rotation sheet. All right. What's coming after cucurbitae? Apiaceae? Amaranthaceae? What are we saying?
And apiaceae.
Beets and spinach and shad.
All right. So it's either or either, right? That is a wonderful question, and I have the most excellent answer. You ready? You flower it out. You cover crop. All right? You do not leave the soil to fodder. You occupy its time by putting in neutral plants. So that can be your herb rotation. Okay? You can put a bunch of basil, yeah, you could grow turmeric in there if you'd like, but that's too many seasons that it would have to sit there. So I would say to you, put some flower seeds in there, put your basil in there. If you're like me, you eat a lot of pesto. So I do have a blog on this that says, I cover crop in the summer because I have no desire to be out there struggling in the heat. I love the heat, but I don't struggle in it. I mostly sit on my deck. I sip my lemonade. I look at my plants on the deck and I'm like, it's a hot day. And that's it. I don't go out there to fight with anything, right? If it will not survive on its own, like my potato slip, the rabbits won. And I let them. I got a rabbit pen. And I'm about to catch me some wascally rabbits and use their poop. I'm going to feed them what they will eat anything, right? The thing is, though, they're eating efficiently, so they're eating from the top down on your lettuce. But there is rabbit scram. It does work, okay? And there are other products that you can use to hinder them. In Alabama, I had a problem with a family of deer. I did not continue to have that problem because I had 2 young men. They were not girls. And you know what the pleasure of being a boy is? You can do your business anywhere. And we're not in the boondocks in Alabama, we're the docks, right? So I told them, I said, look here, dudes, this is your quadrant, this is your quadrant. Drink some water, get to work. My sons took unmitigated delight in letting everyone know, oh no, we don't use the bathroom. Really though? Really? And they just made themselves a nice little perimeter that they had to maintain for the whole summer. So that means that when you rotate out your cucumbers, your watermelons, whatever it is in the cucurbitae family, what you're gonna do is look on the Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide and see what is available in that season to be planted at that time in this family. So let's go back to the Vegetable Gardening Guide to page 7. Let's find ourselves an actual plant for winter that'll come after Solanaceae. So look at your rotation chart. What's going to come after Solanaceae? Asteraceae and brassicas. Okay, so what I want you all to do is think of what our winter months are. And don't laugh about there not being a winter in Florida. We have a winter. I'm salty if the temperature goes below 80 degrees. I'm freezing. All right, so we have a winter. Y'all laugh at me if you want to. I was upset in Alabama. All right, so look at the table and see if you can find something in the brassica or Asteraceae family that you can grow in central Florida during the winter months. Spinach, cabbage, yes, what else? Kale. What else?
Broccoli.
Broccoli, yes. Okay, now, flip the sheets on over, go to the last table. We have one job here in Florida, and that is to find solutions for Floridians. That is what the University of Florida does here, right? And I am a Gator. Right, okay. And so what we do is we use our research stations that span from the Panhandle on over to Jacksonville, on down to Homestead, and everywhere in the middle. So our local research station is IREC, right? Indian River Research and Education Center, right? And you all actually have access to IREC through us and our extension office here in Indian River County. So what we do is we test different varieties of different crops that we know people want to be able to grow. And we check to see if we recommend this for Florida, for people to grow in Florida, what varieties can we recommend, right? So you're going to see where it'll have different types of arugula, right? That's one of the first recommendations. All right. So now it says Speedy or Astro. That's not a brand name. That's not a trademark name, right? So maybe you're going to go onto a seed website, or maybe you're going to come look at packets here, and you're going to want to find something with those words in the name, because that would be that branded name, all right? We're just giving you the overall traits of it, and the wonderful thing about this is the notes. The notes set you up for success. The notes section of this will say to you, it is best to start growing different rounds of this. So every 2 weeks have some seeded out, right? It's not going to say to you, have them set out 100 plants all at once. It says, no, start some seeds every 2 weeks. That way, when you're done culling these, you'll have another rotation in. And the listing that says to you when to grow, it'll say September to February. Those are the best times for you to be able to grow this crop, all right? These things are important. This is the information that you need in order to be successful at this endeavor. So when you've been growing spinach for the whole of fall and you want to know whether or not you can still grow spinach in the middle of winter, yes, you can. You just need to move it down. You're not going to continue growing it in that same spot, but can you grow it still? Yes. All right? Are you still going to be able to grow tomatoes at this point? Yes. You're just going to move it on down the line, okay? So, yes, you can grow various types of cabbage, various types of collards, various types of arugula. Just remember, every season, you're bumping it on down the line. And for people like you and me, you want to cover crop. I cover crop in the summer. My garden bed had nothing but marigolds and zinnias in it. It was beautiful. I loved it. I took many, many pictures of it. It's on our Facebook page, all right? So be very careful about your summer gardening activities. We don't know that we're getting dehydrated, and by the time you feel thirsty, you're very far, all right? So that is one of the reasons why I cover crop in the summer. I cannot risk that, and I encourage other people to do so. So we do have a blog post about how I do my rotation blocks, and then I cover crop in the summer, and then I continue my rotation. Now for you, huh?
What about covering your garden with plastic?
That's only necessary if you had a pest issue. So like if you had nematodes and you're really, really trying to burn them out, then go for it. But for me, I like being able to still provide for the pollinators through the summer, even if I'm not getting anything out of that bed more than the pleasure of seeing it. All right? So throwing my zinnia seeds in there, throwing my marigold seeds in there, I'm still providing for pollinators. And my garden bed is occupied. And I don't have a nematode issue. I don't have a pest issue. If you all have more questions, if you require more support than what I'm able to give you right now, I want you all to contact us. This is our email address, is ircmg1@gmail.com. And find us on Facebook, Master Gardeners of Indian River County.